affordable housing, the update in Bach, and an EPS presentation. And does Susan or somebody want to introduce this, or are we good?
Sure.
James?
Briefly introduce it.
All right, yeah.
We do have David Schwartz and Dan Gamone here from EPS, which is Economic and Planning Systems. They've completed the report on the town's update to the housing needs assessment. Just as some brief background, Bach and staff put out an RFP late last summer, and we got several consultants that were looking to do the update to the needs assessment. We selected EPS. We felt that they had done some good work for the town in the past, and so we felt comfortable with them doing this needs assessment update. Their work included updating data from 2008 and 2009. They've also done a survey of the top 5 employers in the town, and then they did some qualitative interviews. So that's part of the work, and you'll hear some of the conclusions that came from that today in the presentation. This evening we would like to hear their presentation. We would suggest waiting until the end to ask questions if possible, and then we'll have a bit of discussion about where to go from here on housing policy. Once again, David and Dan.
The David and Dan show.
And before we start, I just want to acknowledge that we have 3 of our box members here. We have Suzanne Wheeler, Bob Kaufman, and Kelly Donnelly are here in attendance representing Bach.
Thank you for coming and for all your good work.
We'll turn it over to David and Dan.
All right, thank you. Well, we apologize. There have been a bit of technical difficulties with the presentation. The cursor seems to have locked itself. So some of this may be a little bit small on the screen as it's appearing. But if you have any trouble reading it, just you could raise your hand or just say that you can't read something. We have completed a draft report of the study, and that's been submitted to James, to the town. And I think that the purpose of today's meeting is to explain a bit about our findings, our recommendations, take your questions, and then we'll probably incorporate any comments or any suggestions for modifications, I think, for a final report that we have. This is a series of guiding questions that guided us through the process. This came from the RFP that we responded to. Generally, this is, as James said, an update to the 2007 study that was done. Is that correct? 2008 study. So a number of the questions: what were all the overall housing needs in the planning area? The planning area, as defined by the 3-mile area around the town. How the current or changed housing needs compare to the current inventory of housing? What actions can be taken to address those needs now and in the future? How those needs may have changed over time, at least since the last time it was assessed. How may demand have changed during this time for permanent versus second homeowner residence in the town and in the planning area? What the demands have been and what they are on the price of housing, the residency differences, and what some of the conditions are that contribute to cost burden. Meaning how much households are spending on their housing in terms of income, and what the extent of housing demand is from the low-wage labor force. So we've taken a look at a variety of different conditions. This is a bit of an executive summary slide that summarizes much of what appears in the executive summary of our report in very brief format. The major findings, some of our recommendations. So in general, the findings have to do with employment, looking at the employment trends as they relate to the last decade, also looking at how employment conditions have changed in the last 7 or 8 years. We've looked specifically at the demand and the components of employment growth in the low-wage job sector, or low-wage job sectors, we'll look a little bit more closely at that. We've looked at affordability gaps, meaning the difference between what a household can afford and what going prices are in terms of sales prices and median value of home in the community, in the surrounding communities. We've looked at purchasing power, how that's changed, in commuting patterns. The survey then complemented a lot of the work that we did by asking employees of some of the major employers what portion of them would be interested in living in the town if it were more affordable. That, I think, yielded some results that came to us as no surprise. And I don't think that those results will come to you as a surprise either. We also talked with a number of employers and a number of stakeholders throughout the community, throughout the valley, to identify the level of interest from the private sector and employer community in taking on more private employee housing developments, or the interest in partnering with the town on certain types of development, on certain town-led developments. So, as a result of the work that we did, we have structured a series of recommendations that are primarily focused around a development project, and that is key, beginning with a set of parameters around the magnitude of development. We recommend that there be a project of at least 200 units to meet some of the existing needs and gaps, and to meet demands as growth progresses. The development of this scale would obviously be phased in. It wouldn't all be done at once. It wouldn't all be focused on one tenure. It wouldn't be focused all on one type of housing, or one type of size of unit. So the work here that helped us base these recommendations, that is the second bullet point, that if the affordable inventory of this kind of a project should be focused on family-oriented, but also entry-level housing. And that is on the size of units. There was a great deal of interest in terms of meeting the needs of current working households who are commuting into Basalt, who are looking for family-oriented, that is 2, 3, and even 4-bedroom units. But also there also is a great deal of interest for condos and townhome product that are more along the entry-level price range, that fall in the 1 to 2-bedroom category. In terms of ownership targets, we recommend the community workforce income range of 100 to 140% AMI. I think that translates in cost, it translates to product price between $200,000 and $320,000 per unit. And income level, that translates to about $65,000 to perhaps about $84,000, I think, as the numbers go. And then on the rental side, that would be about 50% to 100% AMI for the rental product, translating to rents of about $800 to $1,600 per month. AMI is area median income. So 100% of area median income is about $65,000 currently. And we do also have some findings with regard to some of the more policy aspects of this. One is with regard to the current inclusionary housing ordinance set aside. And also some recommendations and findings regarding construction defects, which is more of a statewide issue, but still, because it is a very current and a very relevant issue in regards to the construction of multifamily for sale units, it is something important to keep an eye on and to be active about and vigilant.
IHO set aside.
The inclusionary housing ordinance. The town has an inclusionary housing ordinance, and the county has an inclusionary housing ordinance. It is It is somewhat like a development exemption in that it's a mandatory set aside for residential developments to provide a certain percentage of those units as affordable to a certain percentage of area median income.
And one more clarification, on the AMI, the 65,000, is that per person, per house?
That's a household.
Okay.
So it's a household area median income. Right. And area median income, for if anybody needs any additional background, area median income is a metric that is used basically as a standard socioeconomic or demographic kind of a metric on income levels that are also used in a lot of state and federal level and translating to local income qualifying standards. So it's a way of qualifying households into deed-restricted housing. This is a graphic that we've put together to distinguish between the different types of workforce housing needs. So as you think about what housing policy does and what it's accomplishing and whose needs it's meeting, we've divided it into three different categories. On the left side are the part-time and seasonal workforce. And these are the workers who are lift operators. They're seasonal workforce. Their household incomes are less than 50% AMI. So that translates into a household income of less than $32,000 a year for the Mid-Valley. Incomes or rents are affordable to them. If you consider that cost burden is a metric that's used quite standardly throughout the industry as a metric that a household should spend no more than 30% of its income on housing. That includes utilities, that includes insurance and taxes for owners. HOA fees are often included in that. And so for a rental household, that would mean it subtracts out, nets out utilities. So you can afford $800 a month or less, including utilities, at this income band. That is a very difficult income target to make and a very difficult housing target. That's why here the designation is it's typically employee housing. For this type of an economy, this type of a market, that is usually dormitory or lodge-style housing, and that is most often a private sector solution. It's very difficult to make that work from the public sector, and difficult to make that work from the perspective of a regulatory tool such as an inclusionary housing ordinance or an IHO. In the middle is the service workforce. This is staff, retail workers, maids, waiters, etc. They're earning between $32,000 and $52,000 a year for households, not just the wages of their jobs, but this is a household income where, say, the primary worker is in that sort of a job sector. This is the rental category, 50 to 80% AMI. This is among the community housing solutions, but because of this AMI target, it's difficult to get households at that AMI level into ownership product because of the cost of ownership. So because of the cost of insurance, because of the cost of taxes and other types of costs, it's very difficult for a community to make ownership an objective for that AMI category. So that's why this is designated as rental. On the right-hand side is the community workforce. These are the teachers, the tellers, the cops, as the old kind of collection goes. Firemen, police, public safety, public workforce, city staff are all among these types of this type of a community workforce. Their AMIs are between 80 to 120%. So household incomes between $52,000 and $78,000 per year. An affordable target range for a housing unit would be about $150,000 to $270,000. So this is the ownership category for planning and housing policy solutions. where townhomes and duplexes, condo type of product makes sense. Before we jump into some of the main findings of the work, I wanted to just give you a bit of an overview of some of the interview findings that we came up with. A lot of the conversations that we had were really about the need for economic development. And when it comes to housing solutions and housing policy, really the driver behind housing problems and housing affordability are wages and incomes, and that is driven by jobs. So there was a lot of discussion that began around housing policy and the need for housing that circulated back to, or that circled back to the need for economic development and greater job creation. So some of the things that that employers have been doing to stimulate job growth on their own and attract workers to downtown Basalt, one of those has been, I think, stimulated by the fact that rents up Valley, for example, are so high that during the recession especially, there were a number of employers and businesses that moved out of Aspen, for example, no longer being able to afford the rents, moving down Valley toward Basalt. And so we heard a couple examples that had happened, where the example of establishing co-working space came up, where employers and other private sector entities were providing rent rebates for their employees or employees in that co-working space to those who chose to live in Basalt. I think the economic development opportunities that everybody was talking about are specifically related to sort of the up valley to down valley kind of retreat from Aspen of businesses. That is, there is the potential to capture that going forward. I think that it's an opportunity for the town to position for those who do commute out of Basalt, which there are many. It's an opportunity to capture potentially businesses who want to locate to Basalt as attractive to being closer to where their employees live. The other thing that I heard a number of times, and we've heard this outside of this work, is that Basalt should do more to market its downtown. And I think that relates to economic development initiatives as much as it does to housing objectives. We also heard the age-old parking struggles and the age-old parking complaints. I don't think that's anything new to all of you. And that the target price range for many of the employers we talked to was between $200,000 and $250,000 on the housing side. That was a component of why we chose to recommend a price range for the ownership units that's kind of nestled within that range, but also it relates very substantially to the analysis we did. So the challenges that I think that the community is facing is that ownership is becoming more of a problem for the workforce, the community workforce. The rental market is very tight in the community. I don't think that's a surprise either, because there hasn't really been much development, if any, throughout the Roaring Fork Valley in the last 7 years. And the never-ending contribution of the second homeowner market contributing to the escalation of overall housing prices. On the employment side, let's maybe if we want to, I'd like to go maybe a little bit more swiftly through these findings, because half of you have already seen these findings and the other half haven't. So I want to give both of you the benefit of the doubt here, and you can ask some questions later. On the employment side, there has been really that Basalt has captured a portion of the jobs that it lost during the recession and the housing bust. A substantial number of construction jobs were lost, 300 in Basalt. 1,800 construction jobs were lost in the entire valley. Retail jobs followed suit. They're sort of one of those lagging sectors. Manufacturing jobs have been lost. IT jobs have been lost. Although there was a bit of an anomaly there, that Basalt gained 45 IT jobs, while there was a net overall loss of 270 IT jobs throughout the region. The biggest increases, which offset the loss of construction jobs and retail manufacturing, were a big increase in accommodations, a big increase in healthcare jobs. That is really consistent with the state, with other economies throughout the country. A lot of jobs gained in administrative and support services, which are kind of part and parcel to the healthcare industry. And then the real estate industry has actually recovered quite a bit, surprisingly. So you can begin to see that some of these things, especially the accommodations and administrative and support services, where the largest increases occurred, those are actually increases in some of the lower paying jobs. We'll see that in another slide. Here is where Basalt stacks up. Basalt is the red line here. This is indexed to the employment level of 2001. So everybody starts at 100% 2001. That's your employment level. And this trend here shows that this is where employment has gone for each of the communities: Basalt, Aspen, Carbondale, Glenwood, and Snowmass, up to 2013 as a percent of their 2001 employment level. So I hope that makes sense. You can see the escalation in employment here. For Basalt, that was driven largely by construction jobs, as you might imagine, and then the loss of construction jobs here and other sectors from 2008 to 2010. And everybody has been somewhat ticking up here. So this 5% indicates that Basalt's employment level is 5% above what it was in 2001. Wages have increased for Basalt, and this follows a similar pattern where we're basing this as a percent of the 2001 wages. I've not corrected this for inflation. So this is showing that wages were here in 2001, and they're 23% higher by 2013. That's a bit of a dip and a bit lower than where wages have gone for some of the other communities. I don't think that it might be on here if it's not. Inflation has increased more than 23% from 2001 to 2013. So if you do the math in your head, 23% increase in wages and an increase in inflation of about 26% means that wages are actually lower in terms of purchasing power for the average worker today than they were 12 years ago or 13 years ago. This is a summary of 3 findings. One is low-wage jobs. The portion of low-wage jobs in Basalt has increased from 31% of the entire workforce to 43% of the entire workforce. We're defining low wages not by some arbitrary dollar amount, but by the number of sectors. So retail, and there's some agricultural jobs, and I think service sector jobs, accommodation, food service, arts, entertainment, and recreation, which are a lot of the industries that have gained a lot of jobs in the recent past. There's the list is right here. It's service-oriented industries, so I don't need to explain it now. That accounts for 43% of the roughly 2,600 jobs in the town. A couple other stats to get your bearings on what we're looking at. The population has grown by 1,000 permanent residents since 2000. Now, to put the two employment and the population trends in perspective, for every one new job in Basalt, for every one new job from 2001 to 2013, for every one new job, there were 8 new permanent residents in Basalt. So that means that there were not as many jobs created in Basalt as there were new permanent residents. Which means, if you think about where these people aren't just, not all of them were second homeowners, and they're certainly not because they're permanent residents. They're not just, independently wealthy, not working households. These people are working, they're living here, or they're trying to live here, and they're commuting elsewhere for jobs. So that's why when we structure the findings about economic development needs and housing needs, the two go hand in hand, because on one hand, there isn't enough job growth to maintain the demand for population growth, because Basalt is an attractive place to live. And on the other hand, there's a great increase in incommuting, which we're going to talk about later, that is not being met by a commensurate increase in housing inventory. So here we look at the housing inventory increase. 620 new housing units were added to the town's inventory between 2000 and 2010. 75% of those were permanent residents, and 25% of them were second homeowners. Just a visualization of the low-wage employment and a point of comparison. So generally, this chart shows a percent, that is a percent of the low-wage jobs as a portion of the total jobs in each of these communities. Snowmass Village is the largest. They've got 65% of their workforce as low-wage jobs. Those are all service industry jobs. Aspen, as you might imagine, also is pretty high. Here's the Roaring Fork Valley at about 45%. Glenwood Springs is down here. But notice one of the things here that is a bit striking is that Basalt has gone from 31%, the lowest, to 43%, somewhat in the middle. It's a great increase in the portion of low-wage jobs. Median incomes, this is median incomes and housing prices. So as you might imagine, cost of living here, which I cited earlier, has increased 26.5%. Household purchasing power has actually decreased by 22.8%. So when you look at the two of these together, it actually means that household incomes have decreased by about 2% over the period of time we're looking at. Average housing sales prices have increased from about $530,000 to $580,000, an 11% increase. Condo pricing has increased 7%, single family up 15%, and average price home, what is that? That is, the last point is to afford the average priced home of $583,000, the household would need $150,000 in household income, which is twice as high as more than twice the median income of households. Yeah.
Is that income, are those income statistics adjusted for inflation?
Well, I don't think I've reported any. You mean the household purchasing power has decreased by 22%. That actually may be a little bit off. The increase in income. Oh, wait a minute. I think we may have mixed up a couple bullet points. Median household income has decreased when corrected for inflation by 2.3% over the decade. The cost of living increased by 26%, and I think that this should have stated that household incomes only increased by 22% over the time. This was an annual number here, the 2.3%. In the report, it will be correct, or it is correct in the report. This is a little bit confusing, and I'm not sure how to interpret our own notes here. The basic gist of this is that household incomes have increased this much, cost of living has increased this much, which means the purchasing power has decreased for households. The moral of the story is that households can really afford less house than they could 10, 15 years ago. So here's a bit of a comparison of housing sales prices for the valley. Basalt is the red line here. So Basalt wasn't as greatly affected by the massive increase in housing sales prices as some other areas were, but still it was creeping up to the average home price of $1 million back in 2007. Commuting patterns. There are two series of commuting patterns that were interesting to us. One is leading up to the housing bust, and the other is after the employment and financial crisis receded. Employment went down, wages went down, everything else went down. During this time from 2003 to 2008, there were a couple interesting things. In-commuting just exploded. So in-commuting from Algebel increased 42%. It increased 46% from Carbondale. So let me back up here. These are employees commuting into Basalt for their job. So if 100 people were commuting in from Carbondale in 2003, this is just an example, but if 100 people were commuting in from Carbondale in 2003, 146 were commuting in by 2008. It was a nearly 100% increase from Glenwood Springs during that time, 83% from Newcastle, that's a capital N, 47% also from Rifle. So it was extending further and further down valley and way off to, I think it even picked up Grand Junction as well and further on.
In the report, does it actually have the numbers?
Yes.
Because, okay.
Yes.
Because if there were 3 people coming from Algebel
and
it
the
went up
100%
42%,
increase is only
yeah.
6 people by 2008. No, the real numbers are in there, and
Okay.
I think we've got a graph showing at least the aggregate numbers
Okay.
coming up. So.
do we?
Yeah.
Okay. And then since 2008, in-commuting has dropped, but that's only because a number of the industries where in-commuting was quite prevalent, such as construction, have completely receded with the loss of the number of jobs. As a percent of total jobs in Basalt, though, the portion of the town's workforce that is commuting in has still increased. So it's still gone from 69%. So back in 2008, 69% of the town's workforce was commuting in. Now it's 77%. So in spite of the fact that jobs have come down and there have been job losses, there's even a greater portion of jobs commuting. And you can see the in-commuting numbers.
Sort of dissuaded by the fact that it's gone down, because employment has gone down by a greater degree. So the percentage of in-commuting hasn't dropped, it's actually increased.
And on the flip side, this is out commuting. I think that the bigger portion, the bigger concern here from a housing perspective is the number of in-commuters. And the number of in-commuters is often a point of discussion around policy to mitigate the potential the demand that may exist for some of those working households who want to live in the town of Basalt but can't afford it, or there isn't opportunity.
One question on that too. Out commuting is relative to that too, because most of the people that are out commuting to potentially higher paying jobs.
Exactly, and that would make a lot of sense with respect to the other trends. The trends in when you compare the sales prices of units, and we compare the change in incomes and other stats. If the average housing sales price and the median value of homes has been escalating, it's obvious that the permanent residents who are located here, if there are working households, are bringing equity from somewhere else. They're coming from elsewhere in the valley, elsewhere in the region or the state, locating here and commuting out to higher paying jobs elsewhere. Also, putting it together with the escalation or with the change in employment, there really hasn't been because there's been a significant increase in the low-paying jobs and the average wage has really not increased over time. There hasn't been an increase in higher-paying jobs for the town. The affordability and cost burden piece we've kind of gone over. This is a visualization of that point. Was there anything about that? I don't know if there was anything about that we wanted to highlight. The affordability and the cost burden piece of the analysis identifies basically what median values how median values in the town have changed over time, what the type of what households can afford, how that changed from 2000 to 2010, and the graph is an illustration of that change. this graph shows 2000 on the left side and 2010 on the right side. The red, just for a bit of orientation on the visual here, the red is the affordability gap. So that is the difference between what a household with the median income in the town can afford. That's the gray bar. So that's what a household in each of these communities can afford in a housing in an affordable purchase price for 2000 and 2010. And the outline here, where the column extends to, is the median home value in each of those communities. So the red shows the gap between it.
You might just move to communities because it
I
might be hard.
think, yeah, so we've got Eagle County on the top, Aspen, Basalt is the third one, Carbondale, Glenwood Springs, and Snowmass Village. So if we take Basalt, in 2000, a household earning the median household income could afford a $183,000 house. The median home value was about $390,000. So it meant that there was an affordability gap of $196,000 between what a household could afford and what the median home value was. By 2010, taking changed lending terms and other conditions that affect what a household could afford, household could afford a home of $215,000, but the median home value had escalated to somewhere around $650,000. So the affordability gap had jumped from $196,000 to $432,000. So it's a striking widening of the affordability gap, and you can see now that you understand what the gaps indicate. You can see the extent to which the gaps have widened in other communities. There are a couple slides that I should have put them in the other order. There are a couple slides on the survey. The next one. We had so there were responses from 5 of the town's largest employers. Some of the higher level findings here that I wanted to enumerate just for your edification were that we asked them questions about their interest in living in Basalt, where they lived. Most of them, of course, did not live in Basalt. What their preferences were for choosing a home, why they choose a home, what types of priorities they place on price versus location versus type of housing versus other aspects, what sorts of home features were important to them. And we asked them just broadly, if housing were affordable in the town, would you want to live here? 85% of them said yes, we would like to live in Basalt. Actually, here it is, 75% don't live in the town, so we did capture some who do live in the town. 60% were renters, 40% were owners. 77% said they would like to buy a home in the next 3 years. Most of those were not currently homeowners, by the way, and 67%, oh there it is, 67% are renters and 1/3 were currently homeowners. And that was a stat relevant to the next 3 years. So the next 2 charts here, one of them shows a scale of importance by home feature. We wanted to identify, for the purpose of a possible development project that the town would pursue, what types of features a home would have. The green indicates where the consensus was among all the survey takers. So it's ranked according to the types of home features that were most important to people in descending importance. So on the top here, everybody really was in agreement that they wanted an in-unit washer. Sunlight was the next most important thing, private outdoor space, extra storage space, energy efficiency, and pets allowed were the top 6, followed by garage, covered parking, multiple bathrooms, and then on-site dryer and some other things. But the top features here were rather practical considerations for the housing units. The next slide shows what sorts of factors people use when considering to buy a home. Now, granted, we asked people this question in exclusion of others, so that is, we asked them to rank to indicate how important these considerations were in choosing where to live, without saying that they were, willing to make a trade-off in the case that one thing was present but another thing was not. So proximity to nature is the number one. I think that's why people want to live here anyway. But proximity to job was the second highest. Quality of schools, community character, proximity to job for their other household members, community amenities, proximity to services such as shopping, entertainment, and then proximity to daycare was really, really low on the list. But as these kind of questions go, I think they really illustrate the types of trade-offs that people are willing to make in choosing where to live. So that's all the presentation material that we have, and there's certainly a lot of other material in the report, but there are also a lot of things that you probably want to ask some questions about. So we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, let me just clarify. The Bach has always seen this presentation?
We've got a copy of the report.
Okay, well, we get copies.
And we presented a smaller version we presented all the findings. We didn't present all the recommendations to them last time, but they have seen all of the findings.
So, question, I guess I'm going to go to council first, just to make sure that we get our questions in there. Anybody?
I'll start.
Yeah.
What did you learn from this that surprised you?
Well, I think I think on the side of some of the trends, not much really surprised us in terms of the affordability conditions. I don't think there has been a single housing policy study or analysis that we've done in the last 5 years that hasn't shown very similar results in terms of incomes stagnating or not increasing or not exceeding the rate of the cost of living. Housing prices have been escalating faster than incomes can keep up with in most communities. So there is increasing cost burden in most communities, which means households are spending much more of their income on housing than they were 10 years ago and 20 years ago. That's not striking. I think the one thing that is not exactly alarming, but that struck me was just the increase in the low-wage workforce, increasing
or really maybe the loss of jobs, the loss of higher paid.
The loss of higher paid jobs.
We know that Whole Foods is here and they are a bunch of retail workers and there's been sort of a bump there, but I think overall we have seen a loss in jobs in all the valley economies, but maybe the loss in higher wage paying jobs was a little more significant, a little more disproportional than I thought it might be.
So what have you seen from other communities have done to kind of bridge this gap that you see?
Well, one thing I think we tend to see is everybody kind of forgets about affordable housing when the economy tanks, right? Because I think there are more immediate issues, and to some extent the immediacy of the issue is mitigated a little bit, or at least it's not increasing as much. What's underlying all of that is what David was talking about, of just sort of the larger affordability issues that are really affecting every economy, where it's just getting, wages are just not growing as fast as housing prices, and as a result, whatever affordability issues that were there, pre-recession are going to be there as the economy increases, and I guess tend to focus on, and not that they shouldn't focus on job development, economic development, and recovery, and all those other things, but it's, we tend to focus on affordable housing when things are superheated and the market's really hot, and then it's very hard to get your arms around it because it's not an issue. It's not an issue that you can address instantaneously. To develop an affordable housing program, or even for a town this size to try and build some affordable housing units, you know, it takes a number of years, and you're gonna, you know, the need's always going to exceed what you're able to do.
About as far as what other communities are doing, Dan and I have completed a number of other studies in Colorado recently that have looked at these kind of increasing affordability concerns and housing needs post-recession and during the recession, and now we're working with a number of different communities, even much farther abroad than Colorado, on some of these issues. Some communities are willing to take steps on the regulatory side to try to solve their affordability problems, such as implementing tools like an inclusionary housing ordinance. That's a mandatory program. That is a land use regulatory tool that can be used to generate the creation of affordable units, but it's wholly dependent on the development patterns. It's wholly dependent on the development cycle. So on the other hand, our non-mandatory programs, such as incentive-based policies, those are simply where where a program can be established to incentivize the construction of affordable housing, only if a development is requesting something like a variance from an entitlement, or for some additional use, or for a change of use, or for something. It's a bit of a quid pro quo, but it's an incentive structure, so it's voluntary compliance. That also is dependent on development patterns. So if development comes forward, if development is occurring at all, then there is the possibility of that kind of a policy working. If development is occurring, but they're not taking advantage of an incentive program, then there's no affordable housing created. So now some communities are beginning to realize that there needs to be a bit more of a comprehensive approach to developing affordable housing solutions, and that means through creating some new funding sources, because for entitlement communities, for communities that receive federal funding through CDBG, through Community Development Block Grant funding or home funding, for federal projects addressing affordability concerns of low and moderate income households, federal funding has been declining. It's declined HUD's funding has declined nationwide 25% or 30% or something like that in the last 4 or 5 years. And for some communities, it's even greater, which means a third of their programs are gone. A third of their funding resources are gone to addressing these problems. So communities are starting to realize that they need to create additional funding sources. So that has created interest in looking at the feasibility of things like commercial linkage programs, which resort communities have had in place. Many resort communities have had in place for a while. Teton County and Aspen and other resorts have these sorts of things. Yeah, and there are other types. There's residential linkage programs, and there are tax mechanisms that are used in many communities, such as property tax mill levies that are time limited, that generate funding. So back to the higher level sort of answer to your question is, after sort of enumerating the different things that communities are looking at, the different programs, some communities are willing to go on the regulatory side, but there is the realization that can be onerous, or that can be regressive, and taxes can be regressive. There's also the interest in looking at land use guidelines and land use types of site requirements that can be relaxed in order to incentivize housing. And that is where, if a community has very limited resources, a community may want to explore ways to creatively fund or subsidize or lower the costs of development so as to incentivize the construction of affordable units.
Just a slightly different
So
take.
Let me just make one comment. As far as I understand, on the regulatory side, new development can only be required to pay its own way to mitigate for its impacts on the affordability of housing. And so that does not reduce the gap. It may keep it from getting worse, but it doesn't eliminate
the
existing
gap.
problem.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Yes.
But what I wanted to add is, I mean, the sort of regulatory framework of an IHO and commercial linkage is pretty much standard, if you will, in the Roaring Fork Valley and in most resort communities. So that part of it is kind of part of the economic equation and part of what's necessary to at least mitigate, as you suggest, the affordable housing impacts of individual developments, as long as whatever that percentage is reasonably calculated and figured out. I think one of the things that we are also seeing, and David talked about incentives, but incentives can also help to incentivize or get people to do increase development. But I think the other important thing is a lot of resort communities are really engaged in recognizing affordable housing as a larger issue, a community-wide issue, and a greater emphasis on creating alternative funding sources, additional funding sources to partner with the private sector to build affordable housing. So we're seeing community land trust, community foundations for affordable housing that are endowed by wealthy individuals, wealthy homeowners, wealthy companies in certain markets to try and attack the issue both from a regulatory framework and also a community development partnership to build additional housing.
I'm getting the message that we do need to wrap this up pretty quickly because we have our actual regular meeting pretty soon. But I just wanted to say a quick thing. I was invited to join the Pickens County Commissioners. I think it was just yesterday. They had a retreat. They invited Snowmass Village and Aspen and Basalt to come speak. And I have to say that every single governmental entity is talking regionally, and they are talking about the fact that they totally get that their workers are down valley as far out west as you can imagine, and that they are, I believe, really ready to partner with us because they see Basalt as a landing spot, and even identified parcels for the most part that they want to make sure that they have housing for. My one last thing is, in this report somewhere, is there a punchline page that says we need this number of units, this number needs to be rental, this number needs to be purchased, and this is the cost breakdown per month of what they should cost? Is that in the report?
Yeah, we do have a. I think maybe we need to put it into maybe just a table or something like that, where the numbers are just plainly spelled out. But I think it's more in narrative format about. We're recommending that there was an analysis that was done that was comparable to the analysis back in 2008, where it looked at the number of jobs, the number of in-commuters, the portion of the multiple job factored for the multiple job holdings and the number of workers per household, and looked and estimated the number of households that the town needed to mitigate needs for. And that has changed substantially over time based on some of the numbers. So based on that is our 200 unit count.
Very quickly.
Just thanks to you and Bach, because this gives us a fact-based foundation on which we see the problem in dollars and cents. And I would say your report is quite eye-popping to me in that the total housing cost, average costs only increased from 526 to 583,000 between 204 and 13, but the single family price increased to 848,900, a 15% increase. So I would tend to call this study the unaffordable housing study.
We may rename it for that purpose.
All right, and I apologize, I had stated earlier that we would have questions galore, and our subject matter experts had a lot of information to deliver, and I think that's great, and maybe there'll be another opportunity for questions if
Sure.
you guys are going to come back or something like that.
Sure.
But in the meantime, I think, do we need to break or?
Well, we actually wanted to make a few comments because we
Okay.
had wanted to spend some time kind of wrapping up like where we were going. Because Bach wanted to do this, like how many housing units should we build, what type of
Okay.
housing units should we build, and where should we go from here? And that's kind of summarized in James's final 4 points on your agenda summary sheet. And so one thing was
got it.
just the 200 housing units over the next 5 years, but also that we need to target kind of a lower AMI, the average median income, and our housing guidelines. Right now, there isn't a big enough gap between what the free market price is and what our affordable housing price is. A real important piece that they said at the beginning, I think, on the recommendations was the fact that our affordable housing requirements are high and that we need to revisit them and maybe out of sync with our neighboring jurisdictions. So Bach is going to spend a couple months looking at the affordable housing code requirements. We're going to then take it to P&Z and then the town council. So we're going to be working on those code amendments. And just to say that it wasn't emphasized as much, but one of the needs was for family housing, and it was refreshing to see that the study was bearing out what Bach has kind of felt, that we needed to target some bigger units for families. And the other issue that was also kind of coming up with Bach, and again kind of reinforced, was just the livability of the unit itself. And this is just kind of based on what they've been seeing kind of come through their process, looking at it, and it was reaffirmed with this. James, was there anything else you think I should, just as in my litany of kind of where we're going, I should mention?
No, I think you pretty well hit it, but just to recognize that Eagle County has dropped their inclusionary housing mitigation requirements, made it lower, and we tried to match those back in 2009 as best we could, and so that's kind of the impetus for looking at them again at this point. In addition, we'll probably be, after we discuss with Bach, we'll probably be coming back with code amendments maybe in the summer.
So what is the very next step? Or a work session with Bach or?
Well, I think the next section is it's going to be on Bach's place
Okay.
for a while, for a couple months to work on the code amendments, and we'll just kind of keep you updated on how that is, and then P&Z will see it, and you'll see it as an actual code amendment coming forward.
Well, I also want to, besides the consultants, I want to really thank again our staff and Bach, who are volunteers and put way many hours of their own personal time into helping us with this.
And as usual, I would encourage staff to keep us updated as opposed to having a situation we had in the past where a very hard-working committee went off in a different direction and came in and we had no agreement on the recommendations that they had. I mean, it's nice that Eagle County is dropping the requirement just when it's needed. So I think that our direction, might be different, and we should have conversation back and forth with Bach.
Well noted.
So I think we should break now so that we don't make the next people wait for us to return, and we will reconvene at 6:30 for the regular meeting.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for good staff.
Herschel Ross,
Here.
Mark Kittle, Gary Tenenbaum,
Here.
Jackie Whitsitt.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, and just quickly, we want to thank Grassroots for broadcasting our meetings live and for rebroadcasting our meetings. If you want to see these meetings after the fact, you can go to www.grassrootstv.org and search for Basalt. Our meetings will be shown there and on our website at www.basalt.net under Agendas and Minutes. And boy, will that be exciting for everyone to watch those. Okay. Also, this is a reminder that the day after all of our regular meetings, there is a coffee with the mayor at Saxy's across the street. The mayor, that's me, I'm going on vacation, and so in my stead, the Mayor Pro Tem, Rob Levitt, will be at your service tomorrow morning at 8 at Saxy's. You are welcome to go and chat with Rob about anything you want to, probably related to town business. He'll talk about anything I know for fact. And lastly, the last announcement here is that item number 5 on our agenda for tonight that was published has been removed from this evening's agenda for reasons unknown to me. It was a resolution awarding a construction contract for Basalt Park improvements. Okay, so I think what we probably want to do right off the bat, since we've got a crowd full of amazing students, is recognize our students of the month. And where's that little piece of paper that said? Oh, here it is. Okay. So we're pleased to acknowledge the Student Citizens of the Month from the Basalt Public Schools. The awards are based on the 6 pillars of character. And when we get these awards given to us, the nominations are given to us by students' teachers. And so they always select people who are very, very great, or they wouldn't pick them, right? So anyway, tonight's pillar of character is citizenship. And what that means to these folks is that you share to make your school and community better, you cooperate, you stay informed, and you vote. I'm not sure how you do that, but you be a good neighbor, you obey laws and you follow rules, you respect authority, and you protect the environment. So we are going to distribute these awards so that our council can award these to individuals. It looks like we have one. So, Bernie, would you like to go first?
Sure. See, this is Vanessa Bryant. Demonstrates many qualities of the trade citizenship.
Is she here?
Stand up.
You come over here. You're going to be on
Get to
TV
be in
for a
front?
minute. Yeah.
Yeah, face that way to the audience.
Actually, I think there's a camera behind us.
So, Vanessa demonstrates many qualities of the trade citizenship. She constantly improves the BES school environment by cooperating with her peers and teachers. Vanessa's peers are comfortable going to her for guidance and questions in class. She always follows the rules and respects those around her. Vanessa is a wonderful citizen of our BES community. Good job, Vanessa.
Is Alexi here?
Hi there. Hi.
How you doing? So 4th grader Alexi is very cooperative in class and amongst his group of friends. Alexi follows the rules in our schools and reminds classmates to follow rules as well. Each day he does his part to help our environment through his job as energy saver for Mrs. Power's class. He is a respectful and positive role model for citizenship. Congratulations.
I have to say, Alexi also has a very cool hairstyle and great eyelashes. You can't see it from that far away. Okay. My citizen is Zach Hagan. Zach here? Oh, good. Zach is in 8th grade, right, Zach? Okay. Zach exemplifies the pillar of character and citizenship. Zach has a way to be very respectful to peers and adults and is always helpful. He always greets everyone with his infectious smile. infectious smile. Shares his contagious sense of humor and finds a way to make those around him feel good about themselves each day. Zach is an outstanding student citizen at BMS.
Is Ashton Albright here? Ashton Albright. We're not gonna read her.
They're not here.
Ashton's
Oh,
here.
here, take this one.
You get another chance.
America, America.
Is America not here?
America. Got
Oh,
shut out
darn,
tonight.
okay.
That's
We got-
part of our job too.
I know it is.
Darn, striking out. Me?
Yeah.
This is pretty extraordinary, the way this student is described by her teachers. Margarita Alvarez? This is pretty extraordinary. Speaking to her citizenship, her teachers say, Margarita speaks up when she sees wrong. She is not afraid to speak to power or to push authorities towards action. Doing this requires a strong moral compass and self-confidence. It also requires a belief that our school community and the people within it deserve advocacy. Positive change can take some time, but that can't be used as an excuse for not speaking up. We are lucky to have Margarita as an active citizen in our community.
Those are great. So thank you everybody for coming in to acknowledge our citizens of the month. What their prize, I'm sure they'll be so excited, is a pass to the swimming pool this summer. And also, if you would all like to go out in the hallway with your families, they'll be taking pictures that are then posted on our website. So you might want to like friend up with the Basalt website so you can see your kids on our website. So we'll let you go so we don't bore you with our other business. Thank you. Yay!
item on the agenda is council comments, reports, and disclosures. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about? Rick?
We had a retreat with Rudai Water and Power, and it's interesting the direction they're taking in terms of trying to get the word out about the resources that we enjoy right now and take for granted that need to have a little more attention paid. They're going to be sponsoring a symposium seminar for the Valley water providers and anybody else. We're looking to the Roaring Brook Conservancy and ACES and RUDI kind of be the leaders in this. We're also talking about how programs get funded, watershed plans. Basalt, because of this activity, is kind of in the bullseye of how to implement a river master plan and what you do to get that done. Carbondale is also a confluence town, so they're looking at their lives differently, as is Glenwood. So it was pretty interesting. It went on for about 4 hours, and Mark will probably be getting a hold of you guys. They'll be using us as a template, I think. So that's good.
Thanks, Rick. Others? Nothing exciting happened since the last meeting? Okay. Well, I have a couple of quick ones. First, thanks to everybody for coming. I love a packed room and standing room only. That's great. We just at 4 o'clock did the groundbreaking for the Habitat for Humanity House here in Basalt up on Homestead, and it was really well attended. There were lots of very excited people there, many of them involved in the actual obtaining of either the land or the work or something. And so I just wanted to say all the stuff we read in the paper was more so. And there's a couple people out here that I saw up there, so thank you so much. Then I wanted to say that this week, might have just been yesterday, if my memory's right, Pitkin County Commissioners had a retreat where they left their grounds and invited the mayors from Snowmass Village and Aspen and Basalt and some other people from the private sector. The STICO was there and a couple other people were actually there. And they just wanted to get our take on lots of different things. And I would have to say that, well, the message I delivered, they wanted to know what we were working on, and I told them that we were happy that we were finally working on the Basalt Avenue underpass, and that was a done deal greatly. We just got money from the Upper Valley governments, another $750,000 this last week also, to help us complete that underpass. We also talked about the redevelopment of downtown a little bit. And then finally, the message that really floated to the top was the fact that this affordable housing issue is a regional issue, and people were making lots of noise about working together to figure out how to get housing for all of our workers, and rather than people trying to do it individually, especially people with lesser budgets that actually house the workers. So I really expect something to move forward on that, although I cannot speak for the regional governments myself, but it was a great meeting. So if there's no one else that has comments, we'll open it up for citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda tonight. Something that you don't see on the agenda but you wanted to make a comment on. Let us hear it on the record. Yes, sir? Could you just say your name for the record?
Steve Chase, I'm a resident of Basalt. I'd like to call this a perspective. I'm going to read this. This master plan for the town of Basalt is the principal guiding document in the development review process for the town. This was written in the 2007 master plan and was begun not a year ago, Scott, as you mentioned in today's paper, but citizen participation in the process of trying to bring Basalt home, particularly after Highway 82 opened up Basalt to the rest of the world. The citizen participation in this has begun long before a year ago, but really in 2005. And what's interesting about it, and what I put on your desks, each of you, is a map of that master plan, and Bernie and Gary were on that program, as were several other people. in 2007. What's very interesting to me is that all of the citizen participation that has been asked for from 2005 and then 2013, and then the DAC has pretty much come up with the same solution, and that is that we want to see development on the Two Rivers Road side of the Pan Fork property. And so I thought that historic perspective would be important for people to realize that this participation, the citizen participation, has been going on long before that. But since the highway was 4-lane, that this process involving citizens at a huge participation rate has been going on since 2005. And I'd personally like to thank everybody probably in this room for participating regardless of the side of the aisle that you came from, because it made it real. And now we're going to turn this over to you for implementation. That's our hopes.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else? Okay. Our actual next items on the agenda, we have two. One is a presentation or update from Judy Tippett regarding the World Record Report. Sounds very big.
We are going to attempt to set the world record for the largest painting made with footprints. Largest painting made with footprints, whether it be humans and or all of you who know me, puppies. So anyway, this is definitely draft format. Worked on it and kind of finalized today. But as you will remember, in the work plan, we identified that we wanted to do this as part of our planning resiliency. And so we'll continue on that. Our event will be May 30th. And yes, we already have those in the budget. So those are going to be the big questions that you're going to ask me. But the handout is basically, it's just going to be a great summer launch event. We've done a couple summer launch events in the past, and they are some of the reasons we all love to live and work here is it brings everyone together. We want to reach out to all of the businesses and the restaurants and the schools and bring everybody together. We're going to have 1,080 muslin panels. And what those will be is it's a great big patchwork quilt of all the fantastic things that you can do in Basalt. There will be 12 squares. And so we will bring you a square and your paint. We'll get a hold of all the homeowners associations, and we have secured the website Barefoot in Basalt. So we thought we'd wait till spring break is over, and then we will start with the Facebook pages and the updates as we bring this. Working on cutting the fabric, we have, it's going to be 43,740 square feet. We're going to lay it out at the rugby field over in Willits. And if you want to see all of the pictures, so you may very well know the picture that you are working on, or your homeowners, or a neighborhood, maybe a bank, but you won't know all of the pictures unless you want to come on May 30th. So we'll start early in the morning, we'll lay out all of the things, and we're hoping to do our first community photo that day. And so stay tuned, watch the website, Barefoot in Basalt, for more details, and we'll certainly keep you up to that. But we just wanted to put it on everybody's radar, May 30th. If you have more questions, you can ask Mike or me, and we'll start working on that. Like I said, right now we're still cutting fabric. I want to say thank you to Habitat for Humanity. They have made us an amazing deal on our paint. And so we'll be reaching out to everybody to get a panel. And if you have questions, you all know where I'm at. Nice. Anything on that?
All right, something fun. Love that. All right, our next item is Low Enterprises presentation for Salt River Parcel, Mike Scanlon and Susan Phillips. B&Z. Yeah.
Well, this is the first opportunity that the council and the public and our P&Z and DOC, which is the Downtown Area Advisory Committee, have really had to see the ideas that Low Enterprises have for converting their vision for converting the DOC plan into a development proposal. has 3 meetings that we've set to date. This is the council work session presentation, and then on Thursday, we're going to have an open house. That open house is also going to be in this room, where it's going to start at 4:30, from 4:30 to 6:30, where the applicant will be here at different stations to answer questions of the public. Then we have a follow-up meeting. That meeting is actually going to be in the library, which is a bigger venue, so everybody should be able to have a seat. That meeting is April 14th, also on a Tuesday. And that meeting, I think, is going to start at 5:30, and the library has agreed to hold the room open for us in the evening. So we are offering the public an opportunity to ask questions and make comments at the meeting tonight during the time that's available. We also have an Our Town Planning website that there's a button that you can push, and that sends an email to the town. You can make comments there, and you can always bring comments anytime over to Town Hall. So the webpage address for the Our Town Planning is www.ourtownplanning.net, and the email address is
Susan.
What?
Org.
Org, sorry. And then the email address is up there on the wall too, so you can send us directly or just go to the web. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn it over to the Low Enterprises team. They're going to make a presentation. I think that presentation won't last more than a half an hour. We'll have an opportunity for the town council to ask questions, and then during the time available, the public can make comments. And then we're going to try to turn it back over to the council so that Low Enterprises can hear initial questions and initial comments on what they're hearing tonight. So does that work for everybody? Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris.
I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Thanks, Chris. And I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Members of the council and the commission and the committee here, thanks very much for your time this evening. Why we're here is to present to you our reasonably developed concepts for what we might do with the site of the former Cannon Fort trailer park. And we just contracted with this property some 120 days ago, and that was interrupted by the Christmas New Year holiday. So we've really been cranking to take us to where we've got to at this point in about 120 days. Importantly, why we're here is to show you these concepts. And I mean, we could do what a lot of people do, just develop our plans, file a formal application, and then get up here and try and advance it. But we think it's more meaningful to get some feedback from the public sector sooner than not, so that we don't start trying your time by advancing things that are deemed to be sort of unacceptable from the outset. The most important thing is that we really try to follow the principles of the DAC. And within days of contracting with the CDC, we attended DAC meetings chaired by Paul and paid close attention. We looked at some of the plans and concepts that they had developed in their own right without the perspective of a developer who will apply the economic equation. And we think what we've got to show you tonight is going to demonstrate that the what we've come up with is very responsive to those DAC recommendations. But what we're also showing you is something that we think that is economically viable, because economics are a key component of this, as you can well imagine. And it has to do with yield. There's a lot of costs associated with this, purchasing property, reimbursement of the town for the town's expenses, and a lot of the site improvements and cleanup of removing the old trailer park. Future costs to be incurred, all the segments that we're going to provide. And so we've taken an approach here that's economically viable. We've also formulated this concept in a lot of dialogue with town staff. We've had meetings with Susan and Mike and Judy, so we were trying not to do this in a closed room by ourselves. I think the best way to proceed is to give it back to Chris, and he'll take you through the plans. And as we go through those plans, you'll get a better understanding of what we're proposing. Then we'll be happy to take some questions and see what we can do to be responsive to questions. And most importantly, we're looking for feedback. So if you see things you don't like or things that you
think are not going to be palatable to the public sector, let us know. We're not offended. Chris?
Thanks, Jim. It's really great to be here. It's been about a year now, Steve Chase. A lot of people involved to look out into the room, to see so many familiar faces, so many people who put so much effort into this. It's really a good showing of what this town has as far as a backbone in our citizens. I've had many different roles in this process. I've gone from starting out as just an engaged citizen, a father of 2 children in the middle school here in Basalt. I have transitioned into a leadership role with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I was a member of the DAC committee before the free market stole me away, as Paul said in our summary meeting back in December. I'm also here joined by my colleague, John Cottle. He's a over 30-year resident of Basalt, a recently appointed fellow of the American Institute of Architects, which is the hugest honor that our profession can bestow upon itself. And I think that we have been teamed up with a lot of different people. We have worked through over the past few weeks with DHM on the planning and the integration of the various park pieces that interface with the low development property. And we've worked a little bit with SGM on understanding some of the civil constraints associated with this development. And again, it's not, as Jim said, this is not an application. This is a concept. This is an outreach. It's a little bit of a different mode of talking about a project, which is really right in keeping with the Our Town planning effort, I think. It's more of a grassroots, kind of ground up effort than it is a top-down, here's the application, what do you think? So again, we're really looking for honest feedback from everyone tonight. As I mentioned before, we've been going on this for about a year. We see this as a continuum of that process. The Downtown Area Advisory Committee, of which concluded in December, was made up of a vast array of different folks from the community, from one end of the spectrum to the other, and I think it really put some meat on the bones of what their recommendation was. Their guiding principles, connectivity between downtown and the rivers through visual and physical access, I think we all know these pretty well by now, but I'll read them anyways if you can't see in the back. Improving Lions Park, allowing density to drive revitalization, and putting the there. That's been one of the real exciting pieces to work on here. The map that was produced at the end of the DACC process essentially distills down those guiding principles into an idea about what the built form could be. It is purposefully not a scaled or measured drawing. It's a framework, it's a reference, it's a series of ideas that support the guiding principles. And we feel that these principles and the ideas expressed within the map are something that have formed the framework for our diagram as the basis of going forward with this proposal. Last Tuesday, Vice Chair of the P&Z, Dylan Johns, began discussion with the P&Z about, well, how do we put meat on the bones of this? That's coming up. That's happening. It's, I think, in terms of our overall schedule, looking to May, if not in that time frame. So by that time, this map may get codified by the P&Z, and in addition to that, using the tools suggested by Charlie Cole, who's one of the DACC members of the CDC, or the CSC, Commercial Serving Community Zone District, with some modifications to use as a blanket zoning tool to apply to all of the parcels that were in the redevelopment study area, not just the Pan and Fork site. So as we began to really dig in and try and understand how to apply the committee's work and everybody's work before it, including going back all the way to the 97 River Master Plan, we kind of identified these 4 primary issues that kept cropping up in the community consciousness. Clearly connecting downtown to the park, preserving the visual and physical access to the river, the really sexy topic, that of parking. That's one that we're all going to really dive into and spend a lot of time on tonight. And then lastly, building height. Building height is one of those things that is a concern of the community, and we're here to address it. So, this is the starting point, the low concept plan here. We began this process with the end goal in mind. And ultimately, that was connecting the town with the river. We crafted the land plan towards this end. Buildings are considered as drop back to the activity in the riverfront park, as well as the surrounding surrounding parkland over on Midland Park across the river, and as the parklands extend down through Old Pond Park. The orientation of this plan, for those not really familiar with it, is probably going to need a little description, because we've taken the liberty of taking a crack at some of the committee's ideas for parcels outside of the Pan and Fork. So to get everyone oriented, and you may need to kind of move around the room or crane your neck a little bit because of the angle of the TV.
Would you mind standing at the other side, because Rick is completely blocked.
Sorry, Rick. Yeah. So this is going to be a little bit of messy vitality here, guys. Okay, so getting oriented. Green dot, no cat chasing it. That is the library. Here we have the Midland Bridge over the...
Sorry, Chris, just a second. Can anybody else see that green light? No. I think it's best if you use the cursor on the computer.
Cursor on the computer. Okay. I'm going to trade you back then, John. Okay. So, cursor, probably really faint. Okay. Let's try and get back into this. Okay, so cursor. Okay, the cursor right now on my screen, I'm hovering over Gold Rivers Court for reference, going across Two Rivers Road. This is just an idea that Clark's Market may someday be redeveloped and have a more urban form with an edge on the streets with both retail and residential uses. Across Midland, ooh, yeah, okay. We have an idea about what a reconfiguration of Lions Park might look like. One of the key aspects to this plan and in the committee's work is the notion of an open space gesture that extends from the river in the river park all the way down to Midland Avenue and kind of the heart of Old Town. So this is a very powerful notion. Adding on to that, and another, we have Nick Aceto here who coined the phrase the Woonerf, have the idea of a, say it again?
Sorry, Chris.
Woonerf. Woonerf. So we have a Woonerf right here in the kind of brick paving you see here. And that's suggesting a street that is largely pedestrian focused, not vehicular focused, that would be a perfect place for our summer markets. And then as that extends down Midland Spur and crosses Two Rivers Road, we see a continuation of that onto the former Pan and Fork property, the CDC parcel, and being a great civic gesture that then helps to tie that flow of the open space between Lions Park, the corner at Two Rivers Road, and then the Woonerf. Further on down the line, Rocky Mountain Institute, and then the main entry into Old Pond Park.
The main screen, pardon me, Chris, the main screen apparently just went kind of dim.
Shit.
Help Mr. Wizard.
Somebody clap?
Tim,
Hit the space bar?
I think you have one of those smart
No, that wasn't it.
That wasn't it, huh?
Oh, wow, the light went off. Like dimmed your,
Yeah, that would probably
dimmed your laptop.
Well, my laptop
The
is
laptop's
just
laptop's
fine.
bright.
Is the power cord in?
Guys, could we turn up the lights again? This is, thank you.
Was it doing that?
Is it bright?
It's going brighter now.
Coming out.
It's coming up?
Coming up, oh, it's coming back up.
Okay.
There we go.
Coming up again.
Okay.
Yeah, leave the light on.
Okay, so a little confusing here, sorry for that. So I think we've given you a rough overlay of the overall property ideas. Now what we're going to do is look at the same map, but then overlay the guiding principles of the committee on top of that in order. And what will happen is throughout this presentation, John's going to take over and get into each item on a very detailed level. So when we talk about connectivity to the park, John will get in there and be like, well, this is 110 feet wide and it's twice the size of Midland Avenue building face to building face, but that'll come later. The idea here is that we're preserving access both visually and physically into the park and to the river. There's also a great opportunity, as we discussed just a slide ago, about the improvements to Lions Park that could piggyback and kind of the momentum that this project has could carry that project forward. Allowing density to drive revitalization. This is really a topic that's going to go hand in hand with the building height discussion. In simple terms, if you can't go up, you have to go out. And if you can't go out, then you start to impact all the open space connections that are the first point here of the connectivity between downtown and the river. And then lastly, the there. So the position of this site in a 5-minute walking circle configuration. So from this corner, you can walk 5 minutes up the street, up Midland, pretty much touch all the retail that way. Likewise, you can walk south on Midland and find yourself at the post office. So it's centrally located. It's a magnet waiting to happen, with the uses that we'll get into later in this presentation about a public plaza space on the street, an amphitheater that has the capacity to have 1,000 people in it, so about the same size as the Carbondale Mountain Fair venue, as well as a hotel that's carefully laid out with public space, restaurants, bar, retail, all laid out to serve that public realm. We feel like that we've created a node here in this town that will link the energy of downtown to the park. A couple other great features. Like I said, the parking was really exciting. Basically, the parking is been thought of as parked in 2 pods. So instead of linking the parking in one big structure, that because of the way the grades and the water table works would create a barrier to flow through the site. So in other words, where the Woonerf is, if there was parking under there, you'd have to go up a series of steps across and down. By breaking it, you don't need to have that physical barrier there. Some interesting things. So these are footprints of the buildings. This is a pretty exciting slide for us because when you overlay this on the CDC parcel, we're almost 60%. When you overlay those building footprints onto the former Pan and Fork site, which has been entirely a private, 100% non-public use, is now almost 80% open space. And that's not even considering the connectivity down to Midland Park or Old Pond Park. To get a handle on the sense of scale, and again, we'll drill into this a little bit more later, the opening between the building face, the hotel building face, and Midland Road is a half of a football field. 150 feet, 50 yards. It's a significant open space. It's larger than any street dimension we have building face to building face in town right now. And then again, reiteration, Carbondale's Mountain Fair. Well, how about Basalt's River Days? Can really rock out here, 1,000 people. So we're excited about that. I'm going to turn over this presentation to John now, who's going to get into all the details. He's going to answer your questions about how it works and what it looks like.
Do you still have the laser pointer?
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to, you usually start these by saying, can everybody hear me, or can anybody see anything here? No, the green doesn't show up, does it? Does it show up a little bit?
Yeah.
Good, John. Go for it. Okay, so would you mind clicking?
Yep.
All right, thanks. Thanks everybody for your patience. We tried to set this up so everybody could see it. We just need a really curved screen. We haven't got that one going yet. And I know some of you it's really hard. Does anybody want to move or anything okay? All right, we'll get into the details. Chris gave you an orientation. So what we're going to do a little bit more. Oh, wow. I even brought extra batteries. Heck with this. The old-fashioned way. Rick, when I'm in your way, let me know. I'll try and stay out of the way. So there you go. So in really broad terms, there's a residential, this is RMI, a residential building, and the hotel. And then as Chris mentioned, the Old Pond Park access, the open space between the residences, the Woonerf, and then the park. And what we're going to do is just start on the down valley side of the site and move towards the park. So next one, please. So the Old Pond Park access. And again, in detail, RMI and the first residential building. And this is a significant invitation to the public to come into the park. And that's been a part of a lot of people's thinking for a long time, and we've really embraced this. So if you go to the next slide, it's 75 feet building face to building face. That doesn't mean a whole lot to a lot of people, but it's literally about that much shorter than Main Street building face to Main Street building face. It's a big, open, inviting piece of land. And the other way to get a sense of this, so our office is on Main Street. I walk to Taylor Creek quite a bit because I like to fly fish, and so I walk from Main Street to Taylor Creek and back. And when you walk from Main Street, so this is in between Cora Logos and Sotheby's Real Estate. When you walk there, when you're walking towards Taylor Creek, it's amazing how big and open Light Hill is beyond. It's really there. And when you're walking back, how big Basalt Mountain is right there. Well, that's a very similar orientation. And actually, but it's smaller than the space that we're talking about. So this is a big invitation to get to the river for the community. And then, of course, all of the activity down here, there are these wonderful, quiet, I don't know how many of you had a chance to get down onto that part of the site, but it's really beautiful. So next, the Woonerf, I know everybody loves saying that.
John, not clear to me what that is. Do you have an English term
Thank you,
for
Brian.
it?
Actually, Nicosia is here. It's just a living street, or some people it's a curveless street. So it's sort of like a plaza that you can drive through.
And Bernie, we've adopted it. Thank you for asking that question. We've adopted it because there was some discussion during the advisory committees, talks about turning Two Rivers Road in between the Riverfront Park and Triangle Park into a Woonerf, which cars could still go through, but it was really about people. We've really taken it a little bit far. This is really just for people, and if there ever needs to be a fire truck, you can drive on it.
It's a change of service.
But it's a pedestrian street, a pedestrian plaza.
Pedestrian way or mall. you might
Thank
say.
you. Exactly.
And you're proposing parking goes under this?
The parking is not under this. The parking is on the downriver side, the down valley side, and the up valley side.
So that's part of the structures you're showing? The parking? Or is
The
it
parking is underneath the buildings, and we'll describe that in a little bit more. But the idea of the extension of the pedestrian street is that, let's say, when the Sunday market is really rocking, it can continue down between the hotel and the residential buildings and really extend all the way to the river. Now, when the Sunday market's not rocking, there's still, the public is invited through here. There's a fire pit. You try right to the park's trail system. So again, it's really inviting everyone in. And if I could on the next, and again, the dimensions of this, so 105 feet on the Two Rivers side of this is 30% wider than Main Street. It's really a big space. And it's got trees in it and plaza, and we've got some images. Even at the tightest, it's almost as wide as Main Street. So again, we're really inviting the public to the river. Next. So the east side of the site, we're all excited about. There are a number of things we're going to walk through. We're going to click through each of them sequentially. So next, please. So at the top is a plaza that's at street level, and it wraps around, and for those of you who can't see, or I hope you can, it wraps around the green space of the park. And I think this image really starts to tell what can happen there. So it's got park benches. It's where people on the street can really enjoy the civic life, let's say. So maybe there are actually places to sit and play chess, but it's where the town comes to the park. We'd love, there's enough space that maybe there could be food trucks there. And so on the plaza, you could get a sandwich, you could meet people. And then the next thing that you would do is you would go down to the amphitheater. And so we think we can get about 4 feet of drop from where Two Rivers Road comes down there to the park itself. So there's this wonderful amphitheater that looks right at Crown Mountain Park, where you could then sit and have your sandwich. You could, of course, watch music, but it's just a really wonderful introduction from the street level plaza down into the park. Next, and then of course the park. And we could talk about what can happen in the park all night, but the park, as Chris said, there's room for 1,000 people, but there's also room for just our Wednesday concert series. It really can hold a variety of just Sunday events. It would be fantastic to freeze it in the winter and have ice skating right in the heart of downtown. And of course, just kids running and playing, et cetera, et cetera. All the good things that happen in a park. Next one. And the other thing that's fantastic about this continuation of downtown is it is seamless right into the rest of Riverfront Park. One of the things I forgot to mention, some of you who've been involved in the advisory committee or town council, some of these images might be familiar to you. We have reused some of DHM's images, and DHM is the landscape architect who's working on the Riverfront Park. We've met with them, and some of their images are incorporated into this, as are some of the advisories committees, because the work we're doing is so seamless with that. So some of the images, like there's a great, for those of you that can't see it, that little kid running on treetops and all that, that's from DHM's images. And the things that they've talked about and talked to people in the community about will happen in Riverfront Park, seamless with the big lawn area. And then Chris mentioned the hotel programming. This is going to be maybe a little hard to explain here, but there's some components of this that we're really excited about. On the corner of Midland Avenue is a little tiny, what we call the second coming of Joel. We haven't talked to Joel about this yet, but there is a little space that could have bikes in the summer. We'll have bikes in the summer for hotel guests, skis, ski tuning, maybe even kayaks to play in the river. But it's a really small space which is for hotel guests as well as community members. So maybe we could even get our skis tuned in downtown again. And then the middle of this public space, flowing from inside to outside, is a brew pub, classic kind of brew pub sort of atmosphere, great scene inside, great scene outside. And then coupled with that, there is a room right here, which is served by the hotel kitchen, and it can be used for banquet spaces. And it holds about 60 people, with food and beverages. And that is closely tied to the number of people that RMI is anticipating having in their building. Their conference space is about 60 people. So those 60 people could come down and have dinner or lunch in the hotel. It also, of course, whether it's the Lions Club or Trout Unlimited, be a great space for the community. All of those spaces look out over the park and activate the park. So really, there's another, almost a third of a football field that is public space inside the hotel that's all about getting outside and activating the park. And then on top of the hotel is a roof terrace, and we're really excited about this. The views, and this photograph doesn't do it a lot of justice. The views, we think, are really going to be spectacular up there. And there is a terrace which can hold, it's not very large, but it'll be open to the public for events. Hopefully we'll be able to keep it open like Friday and Saturday night for the community members. And it's just going to be a great place for a special event to go up and really enjoy sunsets on the river over the park. And it's something that town doesn't have at this point. So we mentioned Soper's Park, and we wanted, this is a pretty important point. So this is Soper's Park, and this is the music venue. This is the little pavilion that's just a picnic pavilion. And we want to show how, so that's where the music happens. And then, as Chris said, that's where the music happens in our town park, in Riverside Park, with then plazas around it and all of the other open space around it, back up to the Woodruff to connect to Main Street. We think it can really be a fantastic scene. So, what does it look like? Let's click. Let's start talking about that. So just a little more detail. So we haven't talked about buildings yet. We did mention this is a residential building. This is a residential building. We designed them, or are designing them, hopefully for people to live here. So there's what we're calling an internal street, just a tempered space. There actually will be what we're hoping are kind of internal front porches, so you interact with your neighbor. There are outdoor rooms, so you can really live outside. We've designed it, again, I tend to think about how am I going to live there with my fly rod and get out to the river, people walking their dogs. There are 40 residences here. They're mostly 2 and 3 bedrooms, a few 1s and a few 4s. And in between is their little neighborhood domain. This open space is visually open for everyone in the community, but we anticipate it's mostly for this neighborhood. But the open space there is 75 feet wide. Again, it's almost another main street open through the buildings. And then to the hotel building, we talked about the public space. I think the best thing about the hotel building, maybe besides the design, I'm a little biased that way, but I think Jim has mentioned this before. Destination resort hotels can run an unflagged hotel. So it doesn't have to be a Marriott or a Hilton. And what that means is it doesn't have to have Marriott or Hilton's formulaic. We don't have to have 125 rooms. We don't have to have blah, 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 blah. So it will be, whether it's called the Park Hotel or something, just like they've run the Gant and the Stonebridge for a long time. Decades. And we never knew they were a destination resort hotel. So I think that's really terrific for town because all the public space that we talked about is crafted for the town, but it works for the hotel. So that's really important. There's 60 hotel rooms, straight hotel rooms. There are another 24 condominiumized hotel rooms, so 84 keys. And the way we've approached the buildings is very much they are built of smaller grained elements. So there's some dimensions on here, and they're a little random. We could take them from a lot of places in the buildings, but for instance, there's an element right here that's 35 feet wide. A lot of lots in town are 30 to 35 feet wide. So the buildings are built of scale elements which fit in the town. And we could go through and talk about any one of these. Here's a residential building, by the way. The residential buildings, and those are built of smaller scale. They are built of residences. So the scale of them is a dimension of a house. So 53 by 40, 35, and the hotel has similar kinds of dimensions. The other thing that's really important, some of you have heard, these are 3.5-story buildings generally. And what the heck does a 3.5-story building mean? It doesn't mean the top floor is just for a short person. Some people call it a wedding cake. And it's really important that the predominant fly line of the building, what defines the skyline, especially when you're close to it, is 3 stories high. And then the 4th floor is set back. And so here's a person for scale. And when you are within a reasonable distance of the building, the 3rd floor is what defines the skyline, not the 4th floor. And so that's, for instance, a tree for scale, but that's how the buildings work. And then also, of course, people can live on the decks and terraces. And the other thing about that is, building height is a legitimate concern in this community. It has been for a long time, will be for a long time. The scale of buildings, when you're close to them, is when it's most important. And when you think about that, if you stand next to a really tall building, I mean, downtown you stand next to a high rise, it's really kind of intimidating. You get back a long ways, it's like, yeah, it's a high rise. So 3 stories, standing next to a 3-story building is different than standing next to taller buildings or shorter buildings. So that the scale, this is specifically created so that when you're closest to the buildings, the 4th story recedes. So again, what does it look like? So again, if you guys can see this, what we've done here is we've blocked out 2 views kind of as people transverse through town, as you either walk or drive along 2 Rivers Road. And this is from approaching the 4-way stop sign from Up Valley. So on the left is Riverside Plaza. On the right is we started to just block in buildings that would be on Clark's Market parcel. You can see that. And that's shown a 2.5-story building, so 2 stories with the 3rd setback. And then a couple things, I've got to get around here enough to see. These trees are the trees that are in Triangle Park. And we haven't surveyed them yet. But we've estimated them pretty accurately. We think they're between 38 and 48 feet high. And we think we're being pretty conservative with that. But you'll see these trees appear in the different views. So you can get a sense of the building. And then this is the hotel. And you can see that the 3rd story is really prominent. And we're quite a ways back, so you can see the 4th floor. And you can see the park there. So it starts to get an idea of how it sits within the town. Sorry, what?
Sorry.
No, it's good if I... So is everybody clear where that is? And if not, okay, we'll click to the next. So we're now approaching town from Down Valley. RMI's on the right-hand side. You can see, so this is the RMI building. You're coming into downtown. This is the residential building. The other was the hotel. And you can start to see the grain of these buildings. Again, you're starting to read the different grains of the building. And there's one thing that I'd like to point out that's really important here, guys. This, as Jim mentioned, they got involved with the property 120 days ago. And we have done enough work for them to do their financial work. But these models are really early and really rough. And they're in the computer. And so the elevations of the building are pretty conceptual. And they don't have, simply because they're in a computer, they don't have a lot of the scale and grain and texture that the finished buildings will have. Next one. Now we are in the pedestrian plaza, or the Wunderf. So we are walking from Main Street towards the river. The residential building is on the right. The hotel is on the left. And this is when you can really start to get an idea, because we're close enough to see some of the detail in the building. I'd like to just point out a little bit of, so you can see, for instance, we're showing this as maybe a red sandstone. That's one of the middle residential blocks that I had pointed out is about 35 feet wide. It's 3 stories high, and in front of that is 2 stories of balcony, so people get to hang out over the pedestrian street and see the river. And you can see up here there is a 4th floor, but it's set back. So that's, and then you can see also to the right of that, there's a change of material. There's another piece of the residential building. So it's built in small pieces put together. And of course, you can see how much activity and life and fun it can happen in this space, and how, you're going towards Light Hill, so how much you can see Light Hill pull that way. And on the left is the hotel, and there are 3 faces of the hotel, which are 4 stories. But you can also see that within this 4 stories, there's an articulated band, a base to it, a middle part, which we think is probably wood, and then a 4th floor, which is not set back, but it's still articulated differently. So it breaks down the scale of the building that way. From across the river, so the hotel, the open space where the Wonderf is, and the residential building, and then the park would be to the right of the hotel. And again, a couple things. You start to see, obviously, the mountain line behind the hotel. You can still see actually the trees that are on Triangle Park behind the hotel. And again, emphasize that there's a 3rd story element with the 4th floor above it. So right up here, for instance, is the roof terrace, and then the park in front, and of course the Roaring Fork. And lastly, as far as images, the park itself. And again, the orientation. So we're just stepping onto the park near the 4-way stop. The hotel is on the right-hand side, and you can see how again the hotel reads like a 3-story building. The 4th floor is set back. You can see some people up on the roof deck, and you can see how much activity and life. And again, I'm a little biased, but how exciting that would be to have that in town. And the orientation, didn't mention this, or I don't think I did, but Crown Mountain Park is right there. So that view that the most kind of signature view as you walk into the park, that's what's pulling you through it. We have a few more guys. I know you've been patient. So these are images from the advisory committee image boards. And I think we all have, or a number of us have questions of what scale should buildings be in the town. And it was interesting to look through the advisory committee images and how many of them have buildings that are 4 and or 5 stories. So because what these images all show also is all the great life that can happen on streets and well-formed public spaces. And that buildings, if they're appropriately scaled and appropriately designed, can be really great backdrops. So there's a lot of 4-story buildings that are included in here, as well as 3 stories. The other thing that I found interesting after thinking about this a little bit more, Main Street, Carbondale, is a really nice mix of 2 and 3-story building. And again, creates a fantastic street. So there are obviously people in the audience who also say, well, what happens if the 4th? I love it. What happens if the 4th story goes away? There might be a couple. And really fundamentally, Jim introduced it, that the land has a yield that economically it needs to return. And you can do that in 3 stories. You could do it in 2 stories. But what happens is the buildings have to occupy more land. So this is a really simplistic exercise in if the 4th floor comes off of those areas, there is the equivalent of another residential building that needs to take place. So the residences, this becomes much more wall-like, and then the hotel moves and kind of starts to occupy the corner of the site. So rather than these big visual corridors and public access ways through, it becomes a little bit more wall-like. And we've seen some development like that on that parcel. And so we are really quite excited about the fact that if we can keep these open spaces, how fantastic this is for town, how well this proposal can meet the 4 objectives of the advisory committee. And we're really excited about the fact that, could we click? As we talked about, it's almost 60% open space on just the CDC site, and the whole thing is almost 80% open space. And we're really proud of that and think we're really excited about this for the town. And lastly, that's it. Thank you very much.
So that's our presentation. Again, I want to underscore that a couple of points. We formulated this plan very much in accordance with the DAC principles and recommendations. So we started there rather than the usual development approach of just putting up a palette, deciding what we'd like to do. We started with what we think the town would like to do. on staff with Mike and Susan and Judy, so we had some sense of what was welcomed by the public sector. And very important, as I said earlier, we did something that we think is economically viable, so that we can make it work, and it works in that case ideally for everybody. Our intent would be to formally conclude these plans into an application. I'd be ready to file something as soon as the next 60 or 90 days. But we came here this evening to express to the council and the commission and the public at large what our thoughts are, and we welcome input and feedback, and hopefully you'll agree with our vision. With that, we'll entertain questions.
Okay, thank you. As Susan said, we're going to go to the public next for comments and questions. And I don't think we're really planning on limiting that, but it will limit our amount of time depending on how much comes from here. So I guess we will start and just say your name and your comment. Yes,
my name is Bill Lewis. I'm a Basalt resident, and I'm very excited to see these plans. I'm interested to know what price points you anticipate for these residences, and are they justified? I mean, you think you can find that market for whatever price point you're picking?
Skip, you want to comment a little bit about the price points we looked at on the condos?
Well, we have spent some time with realtors in the valley. We're trying to meet what we think is a reasonable price point, and probably a little more aggressive than what is the Village area, because I think the Salt has a little more attraction and it's a little closer to Aspen. I would say it will range, going to be all my numbers here, probably for a 2-bedroom, maybe in the 500,000 to 600,000. 3-bedroom around 7. 1-bedroom in the 4, I think we were about 4 or something like that. And a 4-bedroom, which I think will be around 1,800 square feet, 1,900 square feet, 9,000.
And you think the market can support that?
Yes.
Well, we do. It's really a unique site. We think it'll attract some permanent residents who come in from Up Valley, where things have become prohibitively expensive. The 40 condominium units are also very much designed to be sort of owner-occupied. I mean, they're intended to be residences, not second homes. There's some subtlety to how you design those. You have larger storage space, you have bigger, more functional kitchens, your appliance mix is different, your bedroom configurations are different. And if you're building something that is more vacation-oriented, part-time use, or rental use, only the 12 condominiums adjoining the hotel are intended for that kind of use, and they'll be designed that way. The other 40 are going to be designed with what we think are really attractive to people who want to actually live there.
My only comment was, my concern is you don't want a bunch of spec houses that are empty for years.
Right.
We're trying to, fill these things up. The idea is to get people on rooftops as big as you can.
Right.
Okay. Was that it, sir?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Next. Yes, sir. Did you have a handout back there in the blue coat? Okay.
No, but
Okay.
I think it looks wonderful. I'd love to take my son to that park.
Could you just say your name for the record?
My name's Matt J, and I live in the south side. And I'd love to take my son to that park. I think Basalt really needs this. And I hope we don't scare you all away. So hopefully everything gets done quickly. And I would even say, what do we get if we give you another level? Can you tighten it up and make it a park? No, I'm serious though, because I think the park space is incredible and it's something this community really needs. And then also, I'd love it if once the bulldozer showed up, you had the bond to finish everything so that we don't get a base village situation where it may have been a good idea, but it becomes more difficult.
I can assure you we'll be very cautious about that, and unlike the base village situation, this lends itself to phasing so that you don't end up with...
So it'll be 100% bonded then once you start to finish everything?
Well, you won't end up with a lot of uncompleted segments, and I'm sure we can satisfy the town in that regard.
Yes.
Margaret Pendleton, I'm very impressed with this. I think it looks great. I got a question. I saw something in the paper, and I don't know whether it's just something that's in the paper, but this was a 3.5-year project. So explain what you mean by that, because I mean it seems like a long time for a construction spot.
Well, not out of step with what the gentleman just raised. We would propose it would be phased. So you would do one residential building, and you'd be doing pre-sales, and to the extent that that was going well, we would then start as a second phase, the second residential building, and as those were selling out, in the meantime, you're finalizing your plans in the hotel, you come in and do the hotel in the third phase. We'd also do the park at the end, probably with the first phase, so you'd be balancing on that end. So I think in terms of building it all, it's going to be a good three plus years of construction from the time you start. It might go faster. I mean, we'd love to go faster.
That's a little hard.
That means you're
that's a little
selling.
hard to swallow in downtown.
Yeah.
The other thing I was wondering, is it possible to stake out the building footprints of those things so people can see them?
In due
I don't
course,
know what-
yes.
Huh?
Yes, we could do that.
Because you see it up here, but to visually just walk out there and say, yeah, this is big, or yeah, it's not.
Right. No, we could do that. And we could
So you can see the viewpoint.
We could stake out the corners of the building.
I don't know what they're doing on the park right now for construction wise, but it looks like they're just kind of shut down. So
that's something we could definitely do, of course. All we can do.
Yes, ma'am.
Sandy Holmes, I guess I missed the parking. Is it underneath the hotel and underneath the residences, and how much is it?
Yes, there's parking under both.
Okay, and it's public in both of those areas?
Well, in the residential, it's going to be private to the residential. In the hotel, there would be spaces allocated to the hotel, and there would be additional spaces that would be public. And there'll also be some surface parking on the streets, which of course would be public.
Others? Yeah.
Kathleen Cole. I think it's a great project. I really commend you on the open space in between the buildings, and especially listening to the DAAC on the corner. I thought I was going to have a problem with 4 stories, 3.5, whatever you want to call it, but I don't. So I think it's awesome, and I think wish we could start tomorrow.
Marty.
Hi, Marty Pickett, Rocky Mountain Institute, next door neighbors to this proposed project. And I just want to say that we are excited particularly about the hotel and restaurant. As you all know, in the town, in the city here, that was certainly our issue when we began thinking about our presence on that site, because we really wanted to have a campus feel with the many workshops that we hope to do, where participants would be able to walk to their lodging, restaurants, etc. So we're really excited about the potential. Thank you. Thank you,
Sharon,
Sharon.
is that you?
Yes.
Okay.
Sharon Hall. I'm curious with regards to the hotel. Will it be a full-service hotel, or will it be like the Element?
No, the Element is kind of the bottom tier.
Right.
That's the kind of very canned programmed hotel. All the Elements and all the Hyatt places, they all, once you walk in the door, you could be in Milwaukee or New Orleans, you wouldn't know there. And this is going to be more of a boutique hotel, probably in the 3, maybe 3.5 star range. So I would call it perhaps a limited service. We'd have turn down service. We'll have food and beverage because we'll have a restaurant, we'll have a bar. We may have some limited room service. We'll have meeting spaces and function spaces. We'll have a more distinctive character of appointment. It won't be like anything else. It'll be distinctive in its design. So that's the anticipated character of the hotel.
Any more? Yeah, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry Twillager. I was on the deck, and it seems to me you've moved those ellipses around a little bit further east where we thought development would occur. Also, there's a lot of pressure from the few of us in the deck, not everybody, especially not your friend here, to keep all of the space across from this Lions Park directly across as open space. And right now, it looks like there's a hotel in it and hardscapes. In fact, you show this picture here as green, but when you look at your face down plans, you see nothing but hardscape. And I don't know which you're really planning on doing, but anyhow, the amount of park to me does not seem quite adequate. I mean, I don't care if you have 4 stories, you can have 5, but it seems like it's a very small amount of actual open space. And I don't believe it actually is congruent with what DAC came up in their final plan. It might have been when Chris left that was what it looked like. But a number of us pushed back to get that thing pushed down to the intersection here, so that would be the part of the park that is open.
So when I was part of the deliberations, obviously we're trying to balance a lot of things. I do think that the plaza, the street level plaza, we talked a lot about that because I guess it looks very convincing to just have green kind of on both sides of the street. But I think there's a real case to be made for street level plaza. Again, I'd love to have food trucks there, for instance, but park benches, trees, all the stuff that's civic-like that is really quite nice, that then tears down to the green. And actually, the images they're from the same computer, so they are. I can't tell you exactly where the 3-dimensional image is, the person standing, but they're from the same model, so they're the same image. And I think, we've obviously talked about the amount of open space a lot, and we will continue to, I'm sure. But I think one thing about open space is kind of like building my home, that simply bigger, more open spaces are not always, they don't always feel the best. And while I was thinking, I don't know if many of you have been in South Dakota or Kansas or anything, they're big spaces. They're really powerful. But if you want to sit down there someone to have a conversation, it's so open and it's really kind of daunting. But there are great communities around the world that have significant open spaces, but that have good definitions. And good definitions, there's a ratio of literally building section to height. That you start to feel like a comfortable amount of enclosure. And I think, we talked about this a lot, I think we're pretty close. We feel really good about this. And it is balanced. And Jerry, I know you've been pretty consistent in wanting more open space. And we're trying really hard.
Steve Chase, Basalt. One of the things we learned at DAC from Julie, because you were Parks and, what is it?
Open Space and Trails.
Open Space and Trails, is that Basalt, with our 3,200, a population of 3,200 people, has 275 acres of open space and parks in Greater Basalt. That's what we have. And if you actually break that down per family of 4, it's almost like giving every family a quarter of an acre of park and open space. And so we gleaned that information from Julie's study from Parks and Open Space, that it isn't that we don't want more open space, it's that we are the open space capital of small towns.
I just want to say I'm happy to take more comments, but I know that Gary has to leave at 8 o'clock to go pick up his child, and we are already missing Mark. So we're just not wanting to lose people so that you can hear our comments. But whatever hands are back there, I cannot see your face. If you could just stand.
Brian Dillard, I live downtown Riverside Drive.
100% in support of anything that puts boots on the ground downtown Basalt on a daily basis. The question I have with it is, with that brings people from outside of this town, typically in an automobile. And I noticed with the brick paved streets, that would be eliminating some parking. And I would assume that on the downward river side of the four-way stop, that would also eliminate some parking. And I'm just wondering, with ballpark 1,000 people at an event, where in Carbondale there are dozens of neighborhoods and streets to park in, where would that overflow occur here?
Brian, the streets that had been kind of reclaimed as more pedestrian-oriented streets, those still contain the same amount of parking spaces. It's just that with a different hand on the paving surface and the treatment of the curb to the sidewalk, makes it defers to the pedestrian as opposed to the vehicle. But the same counts are there. The plan that we showed you along Two Rivers Road conforms with the Greenway plan that has been in the works now for years, with the exception of in the zone between the hotel and Lions Park. That parking there has been taken away to, again, slow automobiles down in the core and defer to cyclists and pedestrians. So we might be, this plan may be showing a minor net loss on the surface parking count for that purpose.
Thank you.
I saw another hand back there in that general area. Sharon.
I just was curious when the pre-sales will.
She's ready to sell it.
Just planning.
Was there an answer to that?
No, as soon as we get our approvals.
Exactly. Okay.
We'll get started right away.
Okay, if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to ask Gary if he has a comment before he has to go pick up little dumpling.
Little dumpling. So, my comments are, when we all had that big meeting when everyone came out and was trying to figure out what our feeling was. My big thing was, I can handle some development, but I want to see a lot of park. And I want to see a lot of activity and park activity. I mean, some of the things I've seen here is I'm not necessarily worried about the height, I'm just worried about the extent. And you had numbers of feet. I looked at those, and like where RMI sits is very far back from the river. Where these sit is much closer to the river than RMI. And so that really concerns me on this type of development. You're constraining a piece of this park. And, I do think when you talk about 58% open space, that is a little misleading. If not all of it's open space that people could use, it could be called view space or something like that. So that was one of my big issues. And then one of the biggest things I have with this is that we just sat through an hour discussion on affordable housing needs for Basalt in this area. And I don't see how this, even when you start talking about price points and everything else, this doesn't even come close to finding a way to start dealing with some big issues that we have in this town. And one of the things that I heard Jack talk about and town council really talk about is inclusionary housing in this area. And until you start talking about how we're going to have more inclusionary housing in this project, I'm not there yet. I'm all in favor of allowing some development on this piece and not the anti-development person, but open space is a huge issue for me, and inclusionary housing is a huge issue, because one of the reasons why the CDC was created was Community Development Corporation, was to provide housing, to provide potentially a nonprofit center, and to do these things. And so how does this meet with that original idea? I think, until I get more details on that type of stuff, I'm not sitting here saying no, but these are my issues, and these are the things that I worry about. The V, you have the V on that, and piece of the V was taken up by the hotel space, how that interacts well with the, with how the bar interacts, and, I think that's some of those ideas are great ideas for this space, they really do. I like the potential use of Two Rivers Road in a completely different way, and, I've been a big proponent of the Two Rivers Master Plan when I was first on council, and this could potentially really help that vision of the Two Rivers, recreational center of Basalt really take shape. So I see some elements here that I really do like, but there's some significant issues, affordable housing, how much open space and how constrained this park is really going to be. That's where I'm going to be. I'm sorry I have to leave, but while I was out of town, I had a couple of questions.
Thanks, Jerry. We've noted those comments. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you.
So at this point, I'm going to let the council have their comments. There is going to be a greater opportunity for more public comment, and I think it's Thursday. Could you say that again?
Sure. The open house is this Thursday in this room, 4:30 to 6:30. And then we're going to be April 14th over at the library. We're scheduling that about 5:30. Those times will all be on our webpage. And as soon as we turn over the production of the video, we're going to have that on our website too. And that's the ourtownplanning.org website, and you can also make comments there.
Okay, thanks, Susan, for that helpful reminder. So, Bernie, would you like to make comments?
First question, how does the hotel compare with the Goldstone building in height and mass?
I don't know that. But also, the one is 5 stories.
Well, 4.5 because it's set down in the river.
Are you talking about Youth Center and Old Rivers?
Yeah, Gold Rivers, the one right across the street. In height and mass, how would the hotel compare with that?
I'm guessing a little because I don't know the height of that building. So I do know the building closest to the bridge is a 3-story building that's up by my eyeballs almost 8 feet from the low point in the road. But
that's something I would like to know as we go along. Okay,
we'll get there.
Yeah.
That would be. I think starting the biggest thing first, that you've conformed substantially to the DAC vision, which I think is a good and compelling vision for our town development. And I think keeping that V open is very critical. I'm not quite as concerned as Gary about the mass of the buildings. I think it is critical to have open view space between the buildings, even if it's not public park, because that breaks up the view plane so that we can again have more contact with the river. So I wouldn't really be in favor of reducing that space between that private space between the buildings, because I do think it has a valuable public function in the end. Overall, I like the concept at this level. Parking is going to be a considerable issue. Typically, we get developers that want variances or reduction in the city parking requirements, and I'd have to be very convinced that we have a realistic and accurate amount of parking provided. I'm really concerned about what the parking garages look like. I really haven't seen that here, and I think they certainly could be made to look acceptable with today's building materials and the right mass and whatnot, but that's something that would concern me. As far as the amphitheater, I wouldn't say I'm 100% on board with that. To some extent, I am. What I am on board with is an active city park that activates people, that there's small spaces to do things. I think if you use all your space for an amphitheater, you're giving it a one-shot function. I suggest the arts community is very interested in public sculpture. I would like to see dancing water fountains like they have in Aspen that be activated, and kind of these little park-like features spread around. and maybe you could still do 500 or 700 person amphitheater. Good question, hardscape or softscape, those I think we can deal with later. Gary did raise a big issue. We haven't addressed affordable housing at all in any way here, whether it's off-site, I don't see anything on-site, and to what extent that would be possible. I would say that's something for me that I'd be willing to explore and try and keep an open mind about. But overall, I am in favor of at this 10,000 foot level, conceptually, I like what I see so far.
Thanks, Rick. I made note of those concerns.
Rick, do you have comments?
Yeah, I just want to flip back to that first aerial view of across Midland Avenue and Pan Fork. Very first one.
Wait, the first view?
First slide.
The very first one.
And the reason I want to do this is because just to back up a little bit beyond 2005 or back to about 95. In 96, yeah, not that one. No, the one showing, oh, that works, that lower one there in green. In 96, we had about 25 interns from Design Workshop come here for 3 weeks and spend their whole time here, they're from Arizona, Stanford, top guys. And under the direction of Design Workshop, they went through a charrette with many people. They basically came to the same conclusion as this plan's come to. In 2001, we did the sub-area master plan on the riverfront right there, and we had about 60 to 80 rumpies in the room. They called them the master plan citizen volunteers that basically came to the same conclusions. So here we are today in 2015, and I've been sitting here the whole time, and we've got the same conclusion. So,
Not in the same chair.
not in the same chair, different chair. P&Z, back and forth. Anyway, I want you to take a look at what Bernie mentioned was Gold Rivers. That used to be the other half of the Pan Fork Trailer Park. That was bought in the mid-'80s and redeveloped into what you see there today. If you look at the adjacency of the buildings to the river and all that other stuff, that's the project that drove us to take another look at how we look at the rivers of Basalt. And today, look across Midland Avenue, compare it, and the evolution to me is incredible. It's just taken 20 years to get here. So that said, I think, in the meantime, what's happened is the town has invested $3.5 million,
Close to
$7 million to get it to where it is today, including purchasing all that space that you see that will be open to the public. It's managed to be able to connect all the way down to Homestead and the bridge down there with acquisitions along CDOT. We've got the library parcel, we developed into a park. We're probably going to have the nicest linear park in a river town of anywhere. And I just want to make sure that, looking at this going forward, that we kind of keep in mind where we were and the investment that's been made already. And, every group that's met about this has come to the same conclusion about revitalizing downtown, increasing traffic, bringing more people to the river, having more opportunity for people to live here to enjoy the river, not privatizing it anymore. I mean, all these things keep coming back up. So I think I've heard it enough to where I would like to see something implemented. And, 2 inches shorter, a few pounds heavier, and I don't sit up in my chair as well as I used to. So I don't know how much. So thanks to you guys, maybe we'll see it through this time. Maybe.
So let me outlive us.
And then on top of that, I think to a couple other people here, the guiding principles of social capital matrix was written in 2001, and Mr. Scanlon revived, has guided him the last couple of years to get to where we are today. So thanks to the community for the effort. It's been great. Thank you.
Personal, do you have comments?
I love the layout. Obviously there's a lot of details, a lot of engineering, a lot of, all that water where you want to put parking lots, small things like that. But my whole wish is that that park be the gem of the Mid Valley, and that people come from all over because it's an active park. Because there are things there to do with their kids. There's fire pits, or there's, whatever. I like the broad avenues leading in. In my mind's eye, I always see little shops on either side of them, where you can rent your fishing poles and get your frozen yogurt or whatever, not just that kind of service on the Midland side of the hotel, but actually as you walk through, bringing commercial activity to that. I think in your presentation, I think it would be more illuminating for the public if you show how much of the riverbank is going to be parked all the way down to Old Pond Park. That the hotel and the residences are really on your side of the property on the Two Rivers Road side. And that, yes, we all want park, we all want open space, I want especially active park, but that along the river is going to be parked all the way from Midland to Old Pond Park. And the hotel really isn't going to push down to the river. I think a lot of people's concerns about losing park will be assuaged with that. But I think, we have to talk about affordable housing and all like that. I think the town has been approached by some people looking into buying, the Gold River buildings as a possibility for affordable housing. There's a lot of avenues like that. We've passed a lot of laws since I've been on ordinances, to give more ways for you to do the affordable housing.
Sorry.
I guess that means me.
There's love it and then there's love.
Any plan that brings brew pubs and food trucks to Basalt. Start by saying that.
That's priority street.
I do look at the V on the DAP concept map and the V on your map, and to me that V looks bigger, and I am in favor of expanding that as much as possible. You guys reconfigured Lions Park, which I think is a great idea. I'd like to see, or maybe have a discussion on sort of what your vision would be for that. It's a great place for the Wiley. Is that the best place for a town hall? Do we really need a town hall? Right, so which goes what you're doing there. I do think that should be something we talk about. When I came on council, the plan for that area included a nonprofit campus, but I always thought it was a great idea to bring people and meaningful organizations to town. And I'd like to keep that on the table. Maybe that's a lot for Lions Park or something with RMI. I think that would help get the boots on the ground that we need. The 3.5 stories on Two Rivers Road, I think is fine by me. It looks like it's 4 stories when you're looking from the river, and I am concerned with that height and massing and what it's going to do with the sun and the views and shadows when you're at the park or you're fishing in the river. So if that could be 3.5 stories on that side as well, I think it would be a lot happier. I am a fan of fountains, the active part, I think, like Herschel said. By the time this is done, my kids will be too old for it, but there was a time when you can make a day out of a fountain and everybody would be happy and it was free and easy. And we did just sit through an hour presentation on our need for affordable housing, and we need 200 units in the next 5 years, and this is only going to make that problem worse. It's going to provide more people who need housing.
an easy number.
Just already, you knew that one for sure. I guess I have a couple of concerns. I agree with Gary also that I think we had expected to see more open space, but I understand the economic viability of the situation. But our first interest is for the greater community. So, you know, I think the park thing I've heard plenty about, making sure we have a good regional park so that if we want to have a big concert, we don't necessarily have to go out to the county, which is sort of where it is right now, where the big park is. I also have some concerns about a couple of existing hotels we have here in town that are struggling as it is, and wondering about what will happen to them. I just can't help it. You know, I can envision myself in their shoes. And so I know we're looking for a greater good and we can't take care of everybody, but it bothers me to think about them being put out of business. I also just have a general concern that I've been thinking about, which is that of contemplating the noise that is included with fun, like happens in Carbondale. The Carbondale Park is somewhat surrounded by residences. However, if you go to Salida or downtown Denver to that park area, they're far, far away, so there can be lots and lots of noise. And I know from 15 or however many years on council that noise travels, and so whether it be high-end residential or affordable housing, I'm concerned about how much fun you get to have when you start hearing the complaints. I mean, it's been forever. The two don't mix, and I'm also, I was in a hotel once in a resort that was above a swimming pool. It was just a swimming pool, nothing else. And it was so noisy that I would never go back there. I mean, we had to close all the doors, we could not enjoy the view and all of that. So I just think these are things that we need to figure out, how will that work so that we can make this a regional, fun, active park, like Herschel says, and not have a horrible conflict with residential and hotel. And then I can't help but go back to the whole community housing issue that this is very fresh in our minds, and I kind of wish y'all would have been there to tell you the truth. But as was said before, we are 200 units behind the 8 ball right this second, and it's getting worse. So we need to, I think, as caretakers of the people who work in this community, try to find a way to get folks in a house or in a multifamily. We've had several deals that didn't work. You know, we've tried with the Archdiocese 5 or 6 times, Rick, I don't know, many times. And this last round with the Archdiocese that was going to be at Willits, we went to Denver and tried to get the money, and we didn't make it. And there's another deal going on in a perfect place for housing, which is near the BRT station, and that's sort of struggling along. So we need to make this a priority. I was just at a Pitkin County meeting with the Pitkin County commissioners yesterday, and the mayors of Snowmass Village and the mayor of Aspen and many people from the private sector, and everybody's got the same concern, and those folks are ready to partner with us down here because the situation is really horrible. It's worse than it's ever been. And my last thing that I want to say is that the other thing that was addressed in the housing conversation was the fact that our low-wage jobs have increased from, and I think this was starting in 2000 to now, something like, or to 2013. Our low-wage jobs have increased from 31% to 43%. So our people are earning less money because they're working for people like me, retailers, other folks around here, which is driving them to be working at Starbucks or working in retail or wherever and living in Newcastle. So this is an urgent situation, and I know that there are many things that can cause vitality to occur in this downtown, and I think it's not necessarily high-end residential, and it may be a hotel. I know that
there's some very strong feelings about that, but I guess my concern is that we get some people housed that are already working here, that are trying to raise families and other things. And, you know, once again, the park, I really think could be a viable, big park where we can have lots of fun, but I agree with whoever back there said, we got a parking issue. So I don't know, I'm not sure. We have to park not only, in your proposal, we not only have to park residential, we have to park hotel, and I don't know what that leaves for 1,000 people in the park concert. I don't know where we put them. So anyway, that was
really helpful. We appreciate all those comments. We did careful notes, all this happened.
Yeah.
I just have a plug. In the Chamber newsletter, and Robin can probably say specifically where it is, there's an article about downtowns, and it's really interesting to read and to realize that we are sort of on the front edge of that evolution. And I think about people that are 35 years younger than me. I don't think about people my age very often. No offense. This what we're doing is for the people that are 35 years old, not for us. That's what we're doing it for. And there's a really interesting couple of paragraphs in that article that speaks to governance and how municipalities are going to be run and managed and how they're going to grow and in what way they're going to grow. And I'd really encourage you all to read it and look at what the potential is there to change how we've done business here to a new way of doing business. I helped start Bach, I don't know when it was, 7 years ago. And the number 200 was the same number 7 years ago. So I'm really not sure what these studies prove other than they say 200 in the rental market, 200 in the category 2 market, 200 in category 4 market. As the economy shifts, we have a lack of affordable housing that's rental. If the economy is good, we have a lack of affordable housing that's available to category 2, 3, and 4, like a Burlingame type project. So, we have always been behind that 8 ball. And we didn't have the political will that it took to go out and make something happen. And this is making something happen. We can take the same notions and make something happen with affordable housing. It doesn't have to be on the back of every developer when it comes to the table, because it just doesn't fit sometimes. But we still have to address it. I agree with Jackie. But, we had in the 2007 master plan, one of the things that was changed that I think crippled us a little bit was we had 7 or 8 sites that were designated as affordable housing receiving areas. And the elected officials at the time decided to take that out of the master plan because it gave too much direction. I think what we're doing now is trying to give more direction. And if we believe that these sites that are out and around town, out by Southside, Guido's parcel, Real America, are viable, affordable housing places to be, Willits, 50 units, we need to identify it and make it happen. And we have to have the political will to make it happen. And it takes the community to make it happen. So, read that article, think about what leadership looks like here in another 10 years, and get her done.
Rick's comments just made me realize there's one thing really important that we forgot to mention. And I think Jim introduced the idea that they wanted to bring this forward so that they can get some feedback from the community and town board to see whether they can move forward with an application. But the other thing, as far as doing things slightly differently, that we all feel really strongly about, is if we can get an application in maybe, let's say, May-ish.
Right, 16-ish.
May-ish. But that leaves the time between now and then to have conversations. And it's really important. We talked about this pretty pointedly before the meeting. Our offices are 228 Midland. You guys know where we work. These guys are available. The idea is to have conversations, whether you have real strong concerns or support, is we don't have this chance very often with especially major projects in the county, is to have private and or
community and or coffee shop or whatever kind of communications about people's concerns and how we can make it better. So that's a big part of what this is about as well. So
Let me just dovetail on that. If just so everybody knows, if there was an application on the table, we could not have those conversations.
Correct.
So he's just pointing out that because there's not an application on the table,
Okay.
we can go talk one-on-one. So, anyway.
So give us a call. That's literally a big part of why we want to do it.
Okay, that's really a good point. So,
We're going to be here again on Thursday, so
right.
I'll be happy to entertain more questions from you guys.
So if there's no more council comments, I'm going to close this session of the meeting. And thank everybody for coming. It's great. We have so many people that care.
Thank you for your time.